West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, l'âge tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire,
Things have not exactly been going well for the Trumps. Even before it started, the presiding judge had already ruled on the most critical question in the case, finding that Trump did blatantly defraud banks and insurers. That's already been determined. All the way back in September, Judge Engoron knocked down a number of the Trump legal team's arguments, writing, quote, "In the defendant's world, restrictions can evaporate into thin air. All illegal acts are untimely if they stem from one untimely act, and square footage is subjective." That is a fantasy world, not the real world. Those are the judge's words. Well, Trump has now taken that fantasy world that he's living in and brought it into the courtroom. He's already been hit with a gag order and fined twice for his attacks on the judge's staff. On Friday, the judge expanded that gag order to include Trump's attorneys, who have repeatedly accused the judge's top law clerk of bias against them, desperately referencing a Breitbart piece about a complaint from a random Trump supporter. That's the basis. That's not usually the conduct, of course, of a serious lawyer. I mean, this isn't a serious approach, but it's part of a pattern we've seen from Donald Trump and his team again and again and again. His defense is basically to gaslight, to repeat a lie so often and so forcefully in the hope that his people eventually believe it, despite all the evidence to the contrary. As he once said in 2018, what you're seeing and what you're reading is not what's happening. Really? Now, we've seen this tactic work for Trump in the world of politics, calling investigations witch hunts, insisting on perfect phone calls, attacking prosecutors as deranged, and telling anyone who will listen about stolen elections. And his people tend to follow him. But in a court of law, where the entire point is to settle the facts of a matter based on the law, Trump's usual strategy is clearly falling short. He and his team have insisted that their fraudulent activity was just business as usual. Nothing to see here. This is just the real estate business in New York, and you all just don't get it out there. For instance, Trump's lead lawyer said that the inflated value of Trump's assets simply reflects the change in a complex, sophisticated real estate development corporation. That's it. Nothing to see here. And for Trump brothers John Jr. and Eric, this isn't on them, two leaders of the company. It's all just a classic case of accountants being accountants.
Before even having a day in court, I'm apparently guilty of fraud for relying on my accountants to do, wait for it, accounting.
I just don't seem to recall anything about this. I pour concrete, I operate properties, I don't focus on appraisals.
For all of their talk about pouring concrete, I mean, give me a break with that, and not focusing on appraisals, Evidence was presented that points to their direct knowledge about the fraudulent financial statements. Their direct knowledge, of course. Lawyers for the Attorney General showed that in March of 2017, Forbes magazine had reached out to John Jr., asking why his father had claimed his New York City penthouse was 33,000 square feet when it really is 11,000. That's quite a difference. John Jr. then passed along those questions to a Trump organization lawyer, noting that there was a, quote, insane amount of stuff there. 1 week later, the younger Donald Trump still signed off on a statement that falsely claimed the penthouse was 30,000 square feet. So basically, he echoed the lie even though he knew better. And then there's Eric Trump, who initially testified that he didn't know anything about the financial statements until recently. When confronted by the evidence, however, he acknowledged that he was aware of them as far back as 2013. See, the Trumps can gaslight to the cameras outside the courthouse. They may do that tomorrow. They can post online about their complaints and conspiracies, which they certainly will still do. They can describe Trump's mood as defiant, which is how they're describing how he's feeling going into tomorrow. But ultimately, that playbook doesn't work inside the confines of a courthouse. And this strategy that has worked for Donald Trump so well in politics might end up actually costing him big time in this case. So, Neil, I'm going to start with you because we know that Trump taking the fifth in a civil trial is different, and it could certainly make him look even more guilty. What is better, him answering questions, taking the fifth, in your view?
It's a Hobson's choice. I think both are a problem. So, Jen, I think you're absolutely right at the start to say this trial is not going well for Donald Trump. There's no doubt about that. The judge has already basically found fraud. Now, Trump has a choice tomorrow. Does he continue the 440 times of asserting the Fifth Amendment or not? The case for him of taking the Fifth Amendment is he's basically going to probably perjure himself one way or another if he takes the stand. And he also is known for giving meandering testimony. So in that deposition, that lasted like 7 hours or something like that. And he just kind of randomly says different things about different at all times. And the Jean Carroll thing, he went so far as to say, well, if you're a star historically, then you're allowed to grope women. So, if he does actually take the stand, I expect the New York Attorney General's office to basically give him a lot of rope. On the other hand, if he doesn't take the stand, then New York law, because it's a civil case, not a criminal, says the judge can infer everything against you. So you can read Trump's silence to be the absolute worst. So, I can't imagine having a client like this. So it's a little hard for me.
You're probably not a candidate for him hiring you, or nor would you. Andrew, what do you think here? I mean, so I guess he could not take the stand, I guess you're saying, even though he's scheduled to. He could, plead the fifth 400 times again. What do you think his best tactic here is?
Well, he has to appear in court. He is subpoenaed as a witness, so he will show up. Whether he decides to answer all of the questions, I think, remains to be seen. And I think some of that goes to the strategy that the Attorney General's office uses. Now, as you noted, there are a lot of things that they could cross-examine him on that go to the size of his apartment, how he valued Mar-a-Lago. I mean, there's sort of black and white issues that I think it's extremely hard for him to come up with a consistent theory that's not going to get him into a lot of trouble. But they also could go big in the questioning and ask him about all of the lies that are laid out, according to the government, in the D.C. case and in the Florida case. In other words, it's relevant that the Attorney General's office says they are dealing with somebody who sort of lies, as we live and breathe. And so I think when it gets to questioning that might go big, he could take the fifth and say, if it relates directly to those outstanding criminal cases, I'm not going to answer. But I think he really is going to be sort of forced to answer strategically, because, as Neil says, if he doesn't answer, this whole case is over. The court gets to say, I'm fighting against you just based on your Fifth Amendment.
So these cases are all very different. There's a lot of cases Donald Trump is navigating right now. But if you're Jack Smith, Fani Willis, what are you watching for? They all watch each other's cases. What are you looking for?
Yeah, so I think you're looking for two things. One, procedure, one, substance. On procedure, just which trials are going when, because they all have to kind of work in some sort of sequence. So with respect to the trial tomorrow, that's not fair because that's already started. And I think tomorrow you're just watching, who is this guy, Donald Trump, a different animal when he's on the stand than he is when he's out in front of the cameras. My suspicion is not, but Trump is afraid. He's always been afraid of being questioned, particularly under oath. I mean, the guy's afraid of being questioned, in the Republican debates. So that's why he's not going. And we all know that, the truth is not exactly an element of Republican debates, but nonetheless, he's afraid of even showing up there. So given that, I think they're going to be watching what kinds of things might we get him to answer in a court.
Andrew, real quick before we let you two go, what do you expect the headline to be tomorrow when the day wraps?
I think it's going to be about sort of his incredible answers about the size of the Mar-a-Lago sort of valuation, about the size of his Trump Tower apartment. I think those are such concrete, clear things that I think that's something that newspapers, reporters are going to latch onto because everyone can understand sort of clear black and white issues. And I don't see a way out for Trump in giving an explanation here.
It is Monday, the 6th of November of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, our little Yorkie, is the door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, River City Hash Mondays. That's right. The weekend has passed, and here we are, already on Monday. Well, it's Trump testifying day. Will he? I suppose, once I put myself in the bubble, I try not to, take in more news because I have all the news I can handle. But at some point, maybe during the break, I'll turn around and find out if they've actually begun the court testimony today. I know that he gave some sort of rambling, I'm innocent, this is all a witch hunt, it's all political, at a trial where he's already been adjudicated guilty, and they're just trying to figure out the penalty phase. I don't know what's wrong with this guy. Well, I do. We all do. And so that comes on the heels because, well, I should mention also that he had, of course, has to tell everybody how popular he is. He's leading in the polls, and the New York Times poll came out, and it's the New York Times, so we gotta trust it. The paper of record. My God. A poll of likely voters. Now, whenever I hear the New York Times saying that they have a poll of likely voters, you mean people who don't often vote, but they likely might this time? It just means that they went to that MAGA diner again. It's probably the same one. Who do you think is able to handle the Middle Eastern crisis between Israel and Hamas? Oh, well, that would be Trump. God, get out of here. Who's to blame for inflation? Well, that would be Joe. The inflation has dropped 60%. And they're whining that Joe's the problem of inflation. Of course, now this poll is a year out. And we know why this was dropped right before Trump has to go to trial. It's all part of a whole. He has these trials that he can say, they're coming after me. They're targeting only me. And then targeting only me, they're targeting you too. And then he can cite all these polls that shows that he's so far, far ahead. And then when he gets trounced again by almost 10 million or more, he can say, it was stolen from me. All right. Now, Michael Cohen said that Trump's actual physical appearance today shocked him. He said it looks like, all the blood has been drained out of him. What? And I'm thinking, did he not get the bronzer on enough this time? Because usually that gets covered up. He's going more for the Rudy Giuliani shoe polish part now. I think his original bronzer might have run out. And because of supply chain issues, he has to go to a different one. And it looks a lot different. Now, I don't understand how a guy who has an absolute actual makeup line along his jaw, who has some sort of wispy comb over, that he dies. And they think this guy is so natural and, he's a man of the people. Yeah, right. And at the same time, any guy who wears, like, makeup at a library reading a book is going to get thrown in jail or beat up by Nazis. I don't get it. This guy can wear makeup and go out and say, yeah, we're going to declare martial law on day one and go after all my critics. I'm going to mobilize the military. This guy. He's more popular than Joe. Okay. And Joe's lost the youth vote, too. Oh, really? Has he? Now, I don't believe this poll one iota. Because the numbers on how many, they polled black people. And by some ungodly, 20, 30% purport to be black are going to vote for Biden? Are going to vote for Trump over Joe? What? I don't believe it. I really don't. This is bullshit. And it's the New York Times, and how dare they? Unbelievable. And then between the Times and the Washington Post, they both are putting up these fluff pieces about Trump as if we didn't experience 4 years of this monster. Ban Muslims, separating kids from their parents at the border, throwing their kids in icebox baby gulags and letting them die of the flu on a concrete floor. That happened. And people were making a profit off of it. They still are. But that's not Joe. Nope. So we have a full frontal assault on the truth. And why is that? Who would benefit from that? I mean, besides our own billionaire Nazi oligarchs. Who else would? Hostile foreign powers? Needing America to be knocked a notch down? Or 2 or 3 or 4? What would Vladimir Putin gain by this? What would Viktor Orban gain by this? What would Assad gain by this? What would MBS gain by this? We already know. It's happening. And let us not forget also the involvement of one Michael Flynn and Steve Bannon, traitors to America. Why they are able to roam free is beyond me. Well, I know. I know technically because the crook, the wannabe dictator, pardoned them. And we're supposed to act like that's natural. That's okay. It's bullshit. These MFers, mofos, are so trivial, they complained that Joe was wearing tennis shoes when he went on Air Force One the other day instead of proper dress shoes. Give me a break. I mean, did we ever hear one word from the mainstream and right-wing press about Trump's tonsorial problems? What about that tie going down beyond his crotch? Who wears a tie like that? Nobody. Joe's able, as part of Joe's regular regimen daily, he rides a bicycle. Trump can barely walk. He takes a golf court when he goes around and claims mulligans over 9 to 18 holes on his golf courses. Hope he loses them. Or at least make him pay a fee to play. Guy can't even remember who he's running against and who he ran against. I beat Obama. No, you didn't. So I did mention that, the people who say that we can't vote for Biden, we can't vote for Kamala because, they've been dirtied up by the right wing with agitprop and lies, just like Hillary. We can't vote for Hillary because she's been dirtied. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. She's dirtied. And the same thing is happening to Joe. Give me an effing break. Well, you know what? It's not the flex they think it is. They can give a poll a year out, and we can remind ourselves that Obama polled terribly this time in the election cycle. He was a goner, according to the New York Times and others. We could say that, Hillary should have worked harder. We're hearing that same BS. You have to earn my vote. F you. When you got a guy who's not going to let you put on your pussy hat and march this time. No pussy hat marches this time. And I'm not saying that the women's movement has anything to do with this. I'm just saying. You certainly aren't going to be able to have your PLO Hamas advocacy at the White House. Hell no. You're going to be under live fire this time. Trust me. And it looks like 70 or more million people are okay with this political violence. The ones that vote MAGA. How is that? Counter intel by one Mike Flynn. Steve Bannon involved in this. Our billionaire oligarchs themselves. How much more are we going to take? Well, I would argue we're not taking it. We haven't been taking it. And some of us, not me, I've been doing my little bit, but certainly not what others have been doing for a considerable time. Okay. We can fall for the propaganda, we can fall for the brainwashing, or we can choose not to. When we hear stuff that doesn't make any sense, we don't have to believe it until proven wrong. It's wrong, you know it. 28% of blacks supposedly are going to vote for Trump? Give me a break. When they group all Hispanics together, they're going to vote for Trump. Well, you got to break it down by Cubans, Guatemalans, come on. That says something right there. And even then, I don't believe the numbers, especially when you got icebox baby gulags with kids separated from their parents who are dead from seasonal flu. Or adopted out to some family, and now they're working the night shift at the butcher, or at the slaughterhouse. The killing floor of the slaughterhouse. I got an 8-year-old kid separated from his parents. He survived the icebox baby gulag, so he must be able to handle the night shift on the killing floor at the slaughterhouse. Put him to work. Their little hands can get better to clean those moving blades. You can get their hands in there because they're smaller. An adult wouldn't be able to do that. We need these kids. How sick is this? We're having problems filling employment because unemployment is way down, and that's supposed to be a bad thing. So what are MAGA states doing? What are corporations in MAGA states doing? Illegal child immigrant labor. Where'd those kids come from? Separated from their parents at the border. I know not all. It's exploitation nonetheless. And who gets blamed for it, Joe? Open borders. F you, Nazis. I'm tired of it. I really am. Can you tell? All right, what do we have in store for you here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on this fine River City Hash Mondays? Yeah, well, at the top, that was a breakdown by Jen Psaki about how Trump is going to perjure himself one way or another when he takes the stand in his New York civil fraud trial. Now, if he does plead the fifth, that is judged unfavorably to Trump. In other words, in the civil trial, the judge must presume that Trump is hiding something, and therefore, well, he's guilty. Okay. I don't think Trump understands. Actually, Trump does understand that. He knows that the people who vote for him don't. So he can say anything he wants. And he does. And he gets away with it. And our media is helping him. Damn it. On the rest of the menu, a judge in central Arizona charged with extreme DUI earlier this year has resigned. Well, it's about time. A California police officer involved in a controversial shooting last year has resigned after the discovery of racist text messages he wrote. Oh, did I mention the controversial shooting involved shooting a black guy in the back? Unarmed. He was unarmed. And an Arkansas man was arrested for trying to crash through the exit gates of a South Carolina nuclear plant. What? After the break, we move to the chef's table, where South Korea plans to launch its first military spy satellite on 30 November. And Russia says it test-fired an intercontinental ballistic missile from a new nuclear submarine. Well, that's what they say. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Across the page from that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, and just down a skosh is the link to our Patreon page. If you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could possibly send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance. If you could send those funds our way once a month, thus becoming a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really does help pay our bills and the other costs accrued running this powerhouse of resistance. So we need your help. There's no getting around it, and we thank you for helping us. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, Facebook, wherever, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of those. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, Instagram, Tumblr, Facebook, yada, yada, yeah. You can find me on all those at Justice Putnam, or just simply Justice Putnam, you know. And what the reason for following those social media feeds is that I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos 10 minutes before showtime, and you can get to the actual reportage by going to those diaries, and you can find those diaries by following my social media feeds. See how that works? Because the links are all there, so do follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, really wherever podcasts can be found. You're just not going to find them on Stitcher, and you know why. Okay, got that out of the way. Let us now delve into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and it is staff working the weekend desk, you know where, at the Associated Press. A judge in Central Arizona was charged with extreme DUI earlier this year. Well, she's resigned. The State Commission on Judicial Conduct on Friday, late Friday, said that Seeley Hancock has agreed not to serve as a judicial officer in Arizona ever again. The independent state agency said it won't pursue disciplinary sanctions against the 45-year-old Hancock, who had been a Yavapai County Superior Court judge since 2010. According to a Prescott police report, Hancock was seen stumbling out of a grocery store on March 19th before driving off. Police said the body cam footage of the traffic stop showed Hancock telling officers that she drank a couple of glasses of wine a few hours before being pulled over, but breath tests showed Hancock initially had a blood alcohol concentration of 0.158, with later tests at 0.219 or 0.214%, all above the Arizona's DUI threshold of 0.08. And so police said that they charged her with extreme DUI. Well, she pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor DUI in May, spent a day in jail, and paid a fine of $1,650. Following Hancock's arrest, the Arizona Supreme Court ordered her cases to be reassigned to other judges. Hancock was elected to the bench by voters for Yavapai County's 5th Judicial Division in 2010 and ran unopposed in 2014, 2018, and in 2022. Weekend staff at the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Ash Mondays. A California police officer involved in a controversial shooting last year has resigned after the discovery of racist text messages he wrote, including some making light of the shooting, police chief says. Mark McNamara, who joined the San Jose Police Department in 2017, quit last week after being notified of an investigation into his offensive messages. Police Chief Anthony Matta told the Bay Area News Group. Matta said McNamara was being investigated by the department's Internal Affairs Unit for an unrelated and unspecified matter, and that led to the revelation that he had sent disgusting text messages that demonstrated racial bias. A dossier of text messages show McNamara talking to two unnamed recipients and referring to the March 27, 2022 shooting of Kawan Green. According to the chief, McNamara shot and wounded Green, who is black, after Green appeared to have quelled a fight that broke out inside an eatery near San Jose State University. Green disarmed one of the people in the fight and was backing out the front door, holding a confiscated handgun in the air when he was shot in the back by McNamara, according to police. In a text message dated the day after the shooting, McNamara appears to refer to Green with a racial slur. Other messages from June of 2023 appear to have been sent while McNamara was being interviewed by the city's attorney's office and Green's legal team, which sued the city over the shooting. Dante Pointer, whose firm Lawyers for the People is representing Green, said the messages affirmed to him that the shooting of his client was driven by racial animus. Contact information for McNamara could not be found on Sunday yesterday. He scrubbed it fast. San Jose Police Officers Association President Steve Slack said the text message investigation is a disconcerting reminder that not everyone has the moral compass necessary to be in the law enforcement profession. This behavior is beyond unacceptable, and we condemn it in the strongest possible terms. When you've lost the police union, you know you are out. And staff at the weekend desk brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. An Arkansas man has been arrested for trying to crash through the exit gates of a South Carolina nuclear plant, authorities said. Doyle Wayne Wiesenhunt of Locksburg, Arkansas, was taken into custody at an abandoned home in Pickens County, South Carolina, and transferred to the Oconee County Sheriff's Office, the office announced in a news release. Wiesenhunt, age 66, has been charged with 1 count each of attempted murder, malicious injury to personal property, and unlawful entry into an enclosed place relating to the Thursday night incident at the Oconee Nuclear Station. An arrest warrant says Wiesenhunt accelerated his vehicle toward a Duke Energy security officer while on the grounds of the nuke station in an attempt to cause harm or death. Authorities also say Wiesenhunt caused damage to the gates and fencing outside the secured area of the facility by hitting them with his vehicle. Wiesenhunt also trespassed onto the property of the station without authorization, according to the charges. The sheriff's office said Wiesenhunt was also charged in a separate incident with 1 count of hit and run after he was involved in a crash with another vehicle and failed to remain on the scene. It's unclear whether Wiesenhunt had legal representation. The incident at the nuke plant near Seneca, South Carolina, happened about an hour after security asked the same car to leave when it tried to enter. A pop-up security barrier stopped the car with an Arkansas license plate at the facility around 8 p.m. on Thursday. The driver backed up and tried to drive down a dirt road as security tried to block them in. The driver tried to hit the guards, then drove through the fence and off the nuclear plant property. According to authorities, none of the security staff was injured, Duke Energy said. The Oconee Nuclear Station has 3 reactors and started generating power 50 years ago on Lake Keowee. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, all by myself. Warning, slight plot spoiler. Director David Fincher is known in his movie making, among other things, for having characters who are isolationists. And I think about that in his latest film, The Killer, with Seven screenwriter Andrew Kevin Walker and star Michael Fassbender. Also, I've been listening to a film podcast where the host talks about, among other things, when movie makers have elements of movie making in the movies that they make. And here I'm back to The Killer, which has a really loud meta-cinematic vibe to it. Get this, Fassbender plays an unnamed assassin who gets some blowback from a hit. Other assassins who are like him fridge his girlfriend. Google woman in a refrigerator, Gail Simone. And the whole thing becomes a straight revenge tale. Fast Killer travels the world to different locations and interacts with all these people but remains, like some artists, a disassociated observer. But the whole first beat of the movie, which is great by the way, shows him on the job and Fassbender captivating in his double duty of physical acting this taciturn man and voice acting his inner monologues, talks about his rules, anticipate, don't improvise, choosing the right tools, and the boredom as he waits to get the shot. He's got his own soundtrack, The Smiths, which of course becomes part of the film soundtrack, alongside great music from Trent Reznor. Fincher even shows us what Fast Killer sees through his scope, literally looking at the world through a lens. Fast Killer also says you have to not care about the job. Of course, with the blowback, he does care, but here's my critique. It doesn't seem to matter. He's broken one of his rules, but still does what he does as well as he does and still is who he is. So what's the point? My question also for the film in general. I mean, the movie is unconcerned about the morality of getting us to root for this killer. It's like, I know what David Fincher sees, but I don't know what he thinks or feels. And so I enjoyed watching this movie, but I don't think or feel anything about it. It's also isolating. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. For older adults, optimal aging includes preventing injuries, effectively managing existing chronic conditions, and maintaining physical and cognitive health and social engagement. I'm Dr. Linda Anderson, Director of CDC's Healthy Aging Program. The promotion of cognitive health is a critical component of overall good health. Cognitive health among older adults is not just the absence of disease. It's the development and preservation of cognitive abilities such as memory, language, judgment, and remembered skills such as driving. Cognitive abilities enable individuals to maintain social connectedness, an ongoing sense of purpose, and the ability to function independently. In 2013, CDC and the Alzheimer's Association released the second in a series of roadmaps. This roadmap, the Public Health Roadmap for State and National Partnerships 2013 to 2018, was developed as part of CDC's Healthy Brain Initiative. It reflects the insights and expertise of a wide range of stakeholders at the national, state, and community levels. The roadmap shares the Healthy Brain Initiative's vision of cognitive health as a vital component of overall health and well-being, an area ripe for public health efforts. Specific actions are addressed in 4 traditional domains of public health. The first is monitor and evaluate. Tracking the health of the nation is a fundamental public health function. Actions in this area include assessments related to cognitive health that help quantify and qualify the public health impact and inform public health policies and strategies. The second domain is educate and empower the nation, which focuses on actions that raise public awareness and improve access to information and resources. The third domain, develop policy and mobilize partnerships, includes actions aimed at ensuring that cognitive health is integrated into a broad spectrum of public health work. The fourth area, assure a competent workforce, focuses on preparing public health professionals to translate current and emerging findings on cognitive health into effective public health practice. This roadmap provides a solid foundation for the public health community to anticipate and respond as new scientific discoveries related to cognitive health emerge. Public health agencies and partners are encouraged to work together on actions that best fit their mission, needs, interests, and capabilities. For more information, please visit cdc.gov/aging/healthybrain.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Bertie Bowman began his career doing janitorial jobs and sweeping the steps of the U.S. Capitol in 1944 when he was 13 years old. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Bowman had run away from his home in South Carolina, where his family worked as sharecroppers. He later said that when he was in the cotton fields, he'd look at airplanes and buses and wonder where they were going. Some 20-plus years later, in 1965, still in D.C., he joined the staff of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. As committee clerk, he supervised interns and messengers, including one Bill Clinton, who he bonded with over their shared love of Elvis Presley. President Clinton wrote the foreword to Mr. Bowman's 2008 memoir, Step by Step, a memoir of living the American dream. And Joe Biden wrote the blurb on the cover. When Bowman retired after working for the committee for 56 years, he was the longest-serving black staff member in Congress. One difficult part of his life story, as reported in the New York Times, some of the senators who helped him in his career were Southern segregationists. As he told NPR, I'd be telling you a lie if I said some things those senators said didn't hurt me. Bertie Bowman, a respected and beloved person in the Capitol, died in late October at the age of 92. Rest in peace, Bertie Bowman. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government buy-in for the people. News broke recently that the state of Virginia mistakenly revoked voting rights for 270 formerly incarcerated felons whose rights had been previously restored. An investigation shows that number has ballooned to 3,400 Virginians. Governors Ralph Northam and Terry McAuliffe had relaxed rules, with McAuliffe taking executive action to restore rights to felons upon release. In March 2023, Governor Glenn Youngkin decreed that any felon, no matter what type of offense, would be banned from voting for life and could only have voting rights restored by an action of the governor. Virginia is the only state to revoke rights for any type of felony, and more states have recently restored, rather than revoked, those rights. In late September, Virginia Public Media reported that formerly incarcerated felons who had only minor parole violations had been reported by Virginia State Police to the Virginia Department of Elections as being ineligible. The state initially said 270 Virginians were affected. The list of voters later climbed to 3,400, which the state maintains was accidental. WRIC reports that the Virginia Department of Elections is scrambling to restore those voters, but it is unclear how many eligible voters remain disenfranchised. Investigation is ongoing, but an election for General Assembly and local offices is Tuesday, November 7th. We have more reporting linked at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1982. That was the day that 11 women graduated from the New York City Fire Academy. They were the first women firefighters ever to serve in the city of New York since the department was founded in 1865. The inclusion of women firefighters did not come easily in New York. In 1977, for the first time, women were allowed to apply to be firefighters. Although many women had passed the written part of the exam, they were continually denied employment because they failed the physical test. The women sued citing discrimination. One of the leaders of the suit was applicant Brenda Berman. The federal district court in Brooklyn sided with the women. Not everyone was happy about the decision. A group of demonstrators came to City Hall before the graduation with signs reading, quote, "I want to be saved by firemen." The Uniformed Firefighters Association also challenged the ruling. They tried to block the ceremony in the courts, arguing that training requirements had been changed to accommodate the women. Despite the legal challenges, the ceremony went on as scheduled. In his speech, Mayor Ed Koch said, quote, "As all of us have known all along, bravery and valor know no sex." After the graduation, the controversy over women firefighters continued. The women often faced sexual harassment on the job and vilification on the editorial pages of the city's newspapers. Bumper stickers reading, quote, "Don't send a girl to do a man's job," could be seen on the car bumpers of many male firefighters and at the city's firehouses. The women firefighters stood up to the harassment, testifying before the city council and holding street demonstrations to bring awareness to the discrimination.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 55 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs about the mid-50s, so we're at where we're supposed to be at. Much cooler than it was yesterday, and we'll continue to have showers this morning as we have had all weekend. And then it will be coming a steady rain during the afternoon hours, winds out of the west-southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour, which is an uptick in wind velocity since over the weekend. And we should get rainfall between a quarter to a half inch today. Partly cloudy early this evening with increasing clouds overnight. Lows in the low to mid 40s, winds light and variable, small chance of rain. Then considerable clouds early tomorrow with some decrease in clouds later in the day, a slight chance of a rain shower or 3 or 4 or 5. Highs in the mid-50s once again. Winds will decrease to light and variable. And then we do have some more rain throughout the week, though it has been now forecast to be more spotty as it was in earlier forecasts. Ragweed pollen is rated low here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 28 parts per million. And that daytime UV index is low at level 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.75 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles. And relative humidity is at 95%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 55 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 55 degrees and partly cloudy. Rome is 67 and partly cloudy with an advisory for potential disruption due to rain and flooding. Wow. Bagram is 55 and mostly cloudy. Kyiv is 55 and fair. Hong Kong is back in the forecast at 80 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 75 and cloudy. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 67 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 61 degrees and cloudy. Chicago, Illinois is 58 and cloudy. And New York, New York is 51 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Kim of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. South Korea said today it plans to launch its first domestically built spy satellite at the end of the month to better monitor rival North Korea, which is expanding its arsenal of nuclear weapons. The plan was unveiled days after North Korea failed to follow through on a vow to make a third attempt to launch its own reconnaissance satellite in October, likely because of technical issues. A spokesperson for the South Korean Defense Ministry told reporters that the country's first military spy satellite will be launched from California's Vandenberg Air Force Base on November 30th. The satellite will be carried by SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket under a contract with SpaceX. Why? We all wonder why. South Korea plans to launch 4 more spy satellites by 2025, according to South Korea's Defense Acquisition Program Administration. South Korea currently has no military reconnaissance satellites of its own and relies on U.S. spy satellites to monitor moves by North Korea. After North Korea's first failed launch in May, South Korea retrieved debris from the satellite and concluded it was too crude to perform military reconnaissance. The North Korean satellite would still be capable of identifying big targets like warships, so it could be militarily useful for North Korea.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Staff at the Weekend World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Russian military yesterday, Sunday, reported a successful test launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile designed to carry nuclear warheads from a new nuclear submarine. The report comes as tensions are soaring between Russia and the West over the fighting in Ukraine. Adding to those tensions, Putin last week signed a bill revoking Russia's ratification of a global nuclear test ban in a move that Moscow said was needed to establish parity with the United States. The Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement that the Imperator Alexander III strategic missile cruiser fired the Bulava missile from an underwater position in Russia's northern White Sea and hit a target in the far eastern region of Kamchatka. It wasn't immediately clear from the statement when the test launch occurred. The Imperator Imperator Alexander III is one of a new Bore-class nuclear submarine that carry 16 Bulava missiles each and are intended to serve as the core naval component of the nation's nuclear forces in the coming decades. According to the Defense Ministry, launching a ballistic missile is the final test for the vessel, after which a decision should be made on its induction into the fleet. Keep your eyes open, folks. And that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.